Hello, my name is Richard LaFrance, and welcome to the first in a series of interviews with Cherry Grove old-timers about their lives in historic Cherry Grove Fire Island, where we are being videotaped for posterity. Today is June 18th, 2005, and we are speaking to Jeanne Skinner about her memories of Cherry Grove from the 1920s to the present. This particular edition of this series, which we call Those Were the Days, My Friends, has been funded by a contribution by a donor who wishes to remain anonymous. And that funding will pay for our videotaping and stage management. And I really want to thank those people for supporting what we're trying to do here. And you are named Jeanne Skinner.
Right.
Were you born on Long Island?
No.
Where were you born?
Worcester, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
My folks were up there, and they didn't expect to be there long. It was in the middle of winter, and my dad was supposed to be selling tires. And he said it didn't look like it was going to be any good because all they were using up there were sleighs. And he had an office downtown. Apparently he went down one day and he began to see the street. So he said to my mom, maybe I'll be able to sell some tires. Next thing he knew, there was a couple of sleighs bringing in snow from outside and putting it down on the street. So he said, I guess it doesn't look any good. So that's about when he decided to move to Newark.
New Jersey. Mm-hmm.
New Jersey. Right.
Mm-hmm. And that's where you were raised? That's where you spent your childhood?
For a while. No. My brother was born in Newark, but we moved right after that to Arlington, as far as I know. No place in between.
Mm-hmm. Arlington.
New Jersey.
New Jersey, okay.
It's not too far from Newark. You just
okay. And that's where you went to school?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. College?
No, I went back to Newark for college. Dana College it was at that time. Was connected with Newark University and Seth Boyden School of Business, I think.
What was your major?
English, I think. And I didn't finish. I went 3.5 years because I started in February and went through summer. That was the first part. But instead I got married. Mm-hmm. My mom said, well, sometime you might want to finish, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when did you start coming to Cherry Grove?
Well, my dad's parents lived in Patchogue, and they used to come over here, day trips. They used to make day trips. And their neighbor, the Weeks family, had a house over here. And one time they said to my mom, why don't you take a weekend or a week sometime and go over and use our house at Cherry Grove? And my mom had heard about Cherry Grove, and she said, well, I don't like outhouses. So Mrs. Weeks said, well, we don't have an outhouse. We have a chemical toilet on the back porch, and they had it, all enclosed. So my mom agreed to come over and rent their house for a week or two. And not only we came, but friends of ours across the street with a couple of kids, boy and a girl. So we came out and had a good time while we were here. And the next year, I think it was, my mom decided to buy a strip through from the Perkinson family, mm-hmm. who owned most of it.
Who were the Perkinsons?
Well, they came over and they bought this property, or somehow they got this property, and they decided to have a hotel, or at least part of a hotel. They had people coming over who used to sit on the back porch and the front porch, but if the wind was a certain way, they'd sit on the back porch and they'd look at the bay. And if it was the other way, they'd sit and look at the ocean from the front. But they decided to have shore dinners. Aunt Dell was a good cook, and they grew everything down on the bay side, long about where
Can you look out a little bit more to
No,
speak to
about
people?
where Kay Flagg's house used to be. That's where they had their garden. And they grew corn and peas and everything. And then they also fertilized it with crabs and seaweed and everything else. But it turned out good, and they served everything. The Aunt Dell made something special for dessert, corn balls. And actually, the way she did them, she dropped them in, and they were balls. And then she put hard sauce on them, and that was good.
Now, they owned everything from Lone Hill, which was the Pines, correct? Not settled yet.
No.
They owned all that property from there over to the hotel here.
The Lone Hill was the Coast Guard station.
Yes, yeah. Who would they have bought that land from?
Well, I don't really know, Richard. I don't know.
It was, now you couldn't, that would be impossible to do. The National Seashore, there was nothing like the National Seashore, et cetera, at that time. This was just I don't think anybody cared about it. It was a place where people from the mainland came to spend their
most of them had their old furniture over here and broken down, not nice like we have it today. But they used old stuff. The Weeks family that we rented from, they had two daughters. One was quite heavy. Betty was older. She was quite heavy. And Roberta, who is still my friend, she's 90. She's in Jersey. But they were different sizes, and their beds were one of those kind that... So they put a bolster between them. And one time I came over, I was younger, and I got in bed with him, and I made believe I was the bolster. Aunt Myra came in and found me and sent me home. Which was just next door at that time.
Now, your family settled here in 1926, you said, around there, correct?
That was about when my mom bought the property.
And you told me that they bought strips that were 25 by 80 feet, and they went from the ocean to the bay.
Right, the lot through.
What would the purpose of that be?
Well, I don't know. I guess at the time they figured that that's about all you needed to build a house on, small house.
Perhaps because there were no boardwalks, there was some access to their property where they could, how did they move stuff? On rolled logs or?
Yeah, some of the stuff was moved that way, especially houses, heavy, anything heavy.
Now, your mother bought several pieces of property here and built several houses. Is that correct?
Well, they did build one right behind them, and that was washed away in the hurricane. But they bought a couple. Other people had bought from Sayville. There was a family over there that had 5 daughters, and they had 5 houses, and they named one Alberta, Jean, Josephine, and Beverly. And actually, the one that was Beverly, I think, is where what's his name is now. Who's our custodian in the firehouse, in the community house?
Harold Seeley?
Seeley.
Yeah.
No, the guy who's doing the cleaning.
Louis?
Oh, Bobby Lurch.
Bob Lurch?
No, tall, the one who was my mother in that film. No. Oh, what's his name?
Louis, right? Louisa?
Lisa and his friend.
Oh,
Louisa.
I
Right.
see. Louisa
Right.
okay.
Right. Well, that's one of those houses is still original.
There were about 50 houses at that time, correct?
Oh, yeah.
About that.
Yeah, there were some over this side of the...
Was there ferry service over here at that time? 50.
50?
Yeah, about 50.
like that.
And was there ferry service here at that time?
It was like once a day, maybe twice a day, maybe morning and night.
That was a lot,
Well,
really, for the time.
Uncle Harry, we did not have an uncle and aunt. My father and mother did not have brothers and sisters, but we called the Weeks Uncle Harry and Aunt Myra. Mm-hmm. And he worked for the post office in Patchogue. Mm-hmm. And he went over in the morning and came back at night. Mm-hmm. And
People did live over here in the summer.
Yeah, there were some.
And they went back to the mainland to work.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the family stayed over here.
Right.
Yeah. Now, this was a family community at that time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No funny people, no funny, nothing funny going on. There are also no boardwalks, no electricity.
No.
And you said that your father had installed a generator in the house. Tell us about that.
He did. He put one under the house in the dune, and he made it big enough so he could pad it with the cork that he got out of washed up life jackets. Mm-hmm. Old stuff. Yeah.
Soundproof the room.
Sound, right.
Amazing. People just used everything back then.
Right.
You know, everything was usable for several purposes. Now, was there a post office here in the mid-20s?
Well, I'm not sure. It started with Mr. Perkinson, Mrs. Perkinson being the first one. Mm-hmm. I should have brought those pictures. I have some. Yeah.
Actually, I have some things in here that I published.
I don't have pictures, but I have frames that had their names on. Mm-hmm. I think I've shown them to you once before.
Yeah. Well, when would you say the post office was established here? There was a mail flight in 1929. I know that, so it would have to be before then.
Yeah, that was just a one-time thing. Mm-hmm. This I don't know who started it, how they got it going, but there was a man who had a speedboat. Toad Conklin, I think his name was, and I don't know who the person was that had the plane, but they decided to race, I guess, to see who would get the mail over here first. And actually the plane just dropped it. They flew over and dropped it.
Just like now.
But there were a lot of letters people had posted to come that day. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I have a photo which I can show people afterwards, and maybe we can give one to Brad so that he can photograph as well.
Right.
It was a big event, but just a one-time thing.
Just that one time, yep.
And how many mail deliveries were there a day here? I mean, was there one every day?
Actually, there was also at night. It was strange. But there was one at night too. And Uncle Harry, I call him Uncle Harry, he would come over and we always got a kick. He wanted to go for a swim in the ocean. When he got here, it was after 7 o'clock at night, but I can still see him, he was rather heavy. I can still see the way he dove in. It was like, sideways. He had to do that before he had a supper.
Now, Aunt Dell Perkinson was the first postmaster. You like postmaster, it's a woman, not postmistress.
Right. No,
postmaster.
My mom said no matter whether it was male or female, had to be postmaster.
Postmaster, okay. Right. And Mrs. Stein also...
she did it for a while.
The Mrs. Stein who would be the grandmother of Ken?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, okay.
Maybe great. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure.
And then your mother took over. Eventually.
Well, my brother even had it for a while. I didn't even remember they did, but he did. Mm-hmm. And then my mom.
So how many generations are you postmaster here? You're the, what, third, fourth?
Well, I'm just my mom and me, my brother.
And your brother. Oh, okay, two generations, okay. Right. Thought there might have been more.